Hello everybody, welcome to Nostalgia Goggles. I'm Chris, also known as Retro Gaming Nerd, and so I'm finally deciding to go back to fighting games after a minute because I don't know, I just haven't. But instead of me just mumbling my way through fighting games today, I actually have a friend on board.
Oh, sorry. Hello, that's me. I'm the friend on board. This is Rick. I've known Chris for quite a few years. We've had some good times playing some video games in the past, and he has asked that I give a little commentary on some Street Fighter EX today.
So, before we get deep into it, Street Fighter EX is a very interesting game. I've already talked about Fatal Fury Wild Ambition and the weird in-between era of the jump to 3D for fighting games, so I think it's about time that we talk about Street Fighter's awkward jump into 3D before Street Fighter 4, of course.
Yeah, you know, the biggest thing was them trying to figure out how to present these moves in a three-dimensional space, you know? And one interesting thing that Erica did with Street Fighter EX was that it was only kind of like 2.5D. Like, there are definitely some 3D movement, but for the most part, the gameplay was very similar to what you'd expect in a classic Street Fighter game. You know, there was links, of course, special cancels, all that fun stuff. But yeah, I think some other companies went a little too 3D, if that makes any sense. And Arca, I mean, it's really what they've been using since, is that 2.5D idea. You know, the main thing with that, Akuma and who else? There was one other character. Oh, I think Evil Ryu was in that one, and he could use a teleport, but instead of teleporting, you know, laterally, he would kind of spin around. So it was kind of his version of 3D movement.
So with that being said, we'll get more into that in this review. So, weirdly enough, right, Street Fighter EX doesn't solidly have a story within this game. Now, there are, like, epilogues at the ending, but I mean, that's with every fighting game, and the epilogues, I feel like, are more important and technically could be considered as the story. But to my knowledge, there isn't really a story for this game, and we've tried. So, with that being said, let's move on to the gameplay. So, as we touched upon it in the beginning of this episode, or the intro, Street Fighter EX was very interesting, and can still be felt today through the Street Fighter games, as Rick was talking about.
There's a lot of DNA of EX, and not just Street Fighter, but a lot of different Capcom games, you know, with super canceling first really appeared in Street Fighter EX, you know, canceling from a special move to a super move, and it was later brought into Street Fighter 3 and various versus games, and you know, even, you know, King of Fighters uses it now. So like, it's such a unique idea and unheard of at the time, and you know, originated in the EX of all games.
The thing that's interesting about EX is that it feels also very interesting, and it feels closer, in my opinion, I could be wrong, to the idea of Tekken versus Wild Ambition, where Tekken is definitely 3D, but it doesn't utilize it as much as something like Wild Ambition does. So if you're looking for, like, that, when we say Street Fighter 3D, if you're looking for that Tekken 3, or even, I'd say Tekken 3 is where we really got more into it, I once again can be wrong, or if you're looking for Tekken and or Wild Ambition's level of 3D movement, this isn't here. That doesn't mean the game isn't good, though. This game feels very similar to Street Fighter in what you would get today, as we've once again said.
Mm-hmm. Oh, no, I agree. Yeah, absolutely. You know, at the time, I don't think Street Fighter or Tekken 3 was just out yet. You know, and in Tekken 2, I think the only character with a sidestep really was Kazuya, which made him very fresh into fighting again. So the idea of having, you know, a completely 3D movement thing, that, you know, with Tekken 3, they certainly jumped way ahead in having actual 3D movement. And then, you know, the next game that Namco did with Soul Calibur brought it to a level that, you know, I don't think has been surpassed yet. It's just it's so fluid, you know. Dead or Alive uses that movement. Virtua Fighter, from Virtua Fighter 3 onwards, used something similar to that. So, like, there's a lot of interesting things that they introduced with 3D movement after Street Fighter EX came out. So, to me, it's actually a plus, because I think it would have been really confusing to move around in a 3D world with the characters that can throw fireballs or spin, you know, do a hurricane kick, all that stuff that doesn't really translate too great into 3D.
I think another thing that I want to give this game credit for is that a lot of the games back in this time that were fighting games didn't have a lot of options. Either they had a lot of options for gameplay, or they were just kind of, you know, like, King of Fighters 99, where they just said, oh yeah, here you go, you get this in a gallery. This one, on the other hand, had arcade, team battle, survival versus time attack, and practice, which is a godsend for back in the day, because around this time, we gotta remember, these games were still kind of competing with arcades, and a practice mode was not always a given back then. And that allows you to learn the characters very well.
Yeah, 100%. And, you know, Street Fighter EX was also the very first fighting game to have trials where you go through and they give you specific things to figure out. And, you know, how many fighting games use that now? I mean that's a given in every fighting game. You know, with the newest Guilty Gear, it's actually weird that it doesn't have it in it. Every fighting game, I'd say, from like probably the PS3 era onwards, had some sort of training mode or trial mode that you go through and practice combos.
Mm-hmm. I think another great thing about this game is that there are some differences from its, you know, Street Fighter counterparts between Street Fighter Alpha and even 3, but I think that's just the name of the game for Street Fighter, and I think that this game still plays smooth as butter today.
It does. I mean, you know, with Fighting EX Lair, it's just, you know, this game without the Street Fighter characters in it. So, like, the gameplay holds up. It still exists. It's still great.
With that being said, is there anything else you want to add to the gameplay that I missed since I didn't get too deep into it?
For the first Street Fighter EX, I think that's the big thing. With Street Fighter EX 2, it added some other cool ideas. But I don't know if we want to discuss that. Are we doing a overall Street Fighter EX or just specifically the first Street Fighter EX?
We're doing the first one, so we'll probably come back to the second one.
Okay. Sounds good.
So with that being said, let's move on to how this game presents itself.
Yeah, so the way the game looks, you know, the artwork is great. I believe it's Acumen that did all the key artwork for the game. I have to double check. I don't remember off the top of my head, unfortunately. But, you know, it's definitely one of Capcom's best artists. Not even the time, just in general. You know, same artist that did a lot of work for Darkstalkers and Extra Street Fighter. You know, I'm like 70% certain. 5% certain it was Acumen.
New opponent is ready to face you.
So the artist Rick was looking for was Bengus, but everything else Rick said was actually correct though. No surprise. Rick said that he wasn't really certain, and it kind of makes sense that he would get the two mixed because in reality the two worked on both Street Fighter and Darkstalkers. So it does make sense, especially since they worked on them around the same time. So, you know, he did say that it was a Capcom artist and a prolific one, and he definitely is. So with that being said, I'll let you guys get back to the episode.
But you know, the art looks great. You know, you go into the game itself. The intro is very PlayStation 3D era. You know, where it's like this character standing there. Now it spins around. Look, it's 3D. But once you really get past that and get into the game, it's very charming. And I will fight anybody that has one of the best fighting game soundtracks I've ever heard. The music is so excellent for this friggin' game. It is so excellent.
Oh yeah. So the funny thing about this game soundtrack is I knew nothing about this game. Actually, the first time I was introduced to Street Fighter EX was 3, and that was through Game Informer. But the first time I was introduced, funnily enough, with this one is JonTron, actually. They use the Chun-Li theme. There's an H3 video of where they're doing karate or whatever. And for the transition, they chose Chun-Li's theme, and I'm like, that's interesting, I want to look up what it is, and so that's how I found this game, weirdly enough, through JonTron.
Interesting. Yeah, you know, JonTron works miracles. Yeah, the music is really just absolutely outstanding. Like that, I mean, part of why I kept coming back to the game more than the gameplay was just the music was so cool. You had Rising Dragoon for Ryu and Light Guardian for Ken, Precious Heart for Sakura, with Strange Sunset for Guile, just these great themes. And you know, that was my one critique for Street Fighter 6 is that the music is it's okay. You know, there's some good tracks in there, but you know, I dream of like a world where they would have gotten the team that did Street Fighter EX do Street Fighter 6 soundtrack.
The thing I love about it is that Sakura's theme feels like it embodies the character. Every character theme embodies the character, but also it feels like it's a lost intro to an anime.
Yes, Sakura's especially, 1,000%, yes. 100%, yeah.
Guile's theme is also another one that also, if I'm remembering the theme correctly, it's one of those other ones that, like, you first think about hearing it and you're like, oh, it's kind of mid, and then it gets into it and it's like, oh, this is fire.
Yes. You're like it's weird, like, do 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 do. You're like, this is Guile's theme, and like this weird piano comes in. You're like, okay, well maybe it'll take off. And then it's like, gotcha, fooled ya, and then it actually starts, and it is just excellent.
Which is funny because that's kind of what Guile's theme has been. It's always kind of been one of those like undisputable bops. So
Yeah. That's definitely a stealth banger, man. Like, it's like, okay, this is cool, and then it's like an earworm. You can't get it out of your head. It's just excellent. And as they proved, 15 years ago on YouTube, that Guile's theme really goes with everything.
yeah. Another thing that I think is interesting is that I don't think every single character, especially the new ones, are standouts to me, but the ones that are great. One of my favorite characters is Skullomania, and I really want them to come back in a Street Fighter game.
I think we'll see it. Skullomania, I think, was a hidden character in the SNK, Girl Fighter Frenzy or whatever it was called. Like, for whatever reason, he's in that. So I feel like we'll see them. And I keep thinking that they added a costume for him in Street Fighter V near the end of its cycle. They added Garuda and Skullomania and I believe Kyrie all to the game. Maybe some other ones as well.
I mean, of course, obviously, I'm bringing that one up, but all the other characters that are in this game are also, even if I don't like them, they're very well designed, especially being translated into 3D at a time like this. Like, the polygon is great, and I think the thing that makes it even great is that it kind of scratches that itch for me to ask what would a 3D Street Fighter look like in the PlayStation era, and it looks just phenomenal. And one last thing I'd like to talk about when it comes to presentation is something that I feel like a lot of people don't talk about in fighting games is the backgrounds of this one.
Yeah, they're really cool, really interesting. That it takes more of the Tekken 2 approach of having kind of almost like a painted landscape in the background. So you have, like a forest, there's like a mountain stage. Of course, there's the airfield for Guile. There's a school. I'm trying to think, what other ones were in the first year? Oh, there's like a cool, like little, like, almost like a Thailand beach area that looked really interesting. That was Bison Stage. So it's a really interesting thing.
I feel like all in all, this game presents itself very well, and at some points are just super astounding, especially for the music and the way that it presented itself back in the day. But I think all in all, this game does a great job at presenting itself.
It does. I agree. It really does.
So with that being said, none of this matters if you can't get your hands on the game. So let's talk about the accessibility. So, Street Fighter EX is not a common game to get your hands on. It's unfortunately not... I don't believe it's on any PlayStation Store, and even if it is, it's on the PlayStation 3 store, which is not going to be open for much longer.
Yeah, it's very disappointing. With a lot of the 3D era for Capcom, they just don't really care to collect it. You'll get collection after collection after collection for Street Fighter 2, but everything else is really put to the wayside. Even for a long time, Street Fighter 3 was put to the wayside. It's only in the last maybe 5-6 years where they really made it accessible, or maybe a little longer than that. Because I know they did a Street Fighter 3 online version for the PS3, and it was like the first time it was like really available for people to play beyond the original Dreamcast, or if you were lucky enough to find the Street Fighter Anniversary Collection for PS2. So they just take their time. But it would be really great to get a 3D era collection, maybe with Street Fighter EX and Project Justice and Rival Schools, and even Plasma Sword would be wonderful. I think that would be a great collection, and I know I'd be there. I'd pre-order it.
Yo, let's throw some Power Stone in there too. I know it's not the same, but like...
Oh, absolutely. No. Absolutely Power Stone. I was trying to think of... I know there's one other 3D era flagship title for Capcom. Yeah, Power Stone. It is bizarre. Like, all those games have been really just forgotten needlessly. It's not like they're bad games. I understand that they were embarrassed about it, but there's nothing to be embarrassed about. There's so many great characters in there. You have with Plasma Sword, you have Hayato, who appeared in Marvel vs. Capcom 2. There's Bilstein and June and Saturn. Just really interesting characters. And of course, Rival Schools, I think, has some legendarily amazing characters and character designs. There's Kyosuke, who was in Capcom vs. MK2, and then just recently added Akira to Street Fighter V's last season. There's Hinata, and there's Shoma, and Natsu, and Batsu, and of course also there's Vatsu, and a lot of great characters. One of my absolute favorites is a character named Kuro from the third game, Project Justice. So there's just so many great characters in these games, and
great storylines and just interesting gameplay ideas, and Capcom really just kind of doesn't really do anything with them. And I think it's a huge, huge shame.
Well, yeah, especially since, to put this in perspective, we only recently just got Darkstalkers in a full collection and Red Earth.
Yeah. A little over a year ago. Yeah, honestly, I was just playing it last night because it was. I watched a little video about it because it's Halloween time, and I always think about Darkstalkers Halloween time. So I went back and I was playing Darkstalkers and just being awash in nostalgia. The first Capcom game I really got into was Darkstalkers. So always makes me feel like a little kid again whenever I throw on the original and put this on Lord Raptor stage.
So, to bring up something to go on with the prices of this, the PlayStation 1 version goes for around $40 complete, which I think is pretty decent, but it's also a hard drop. I feel like if you're looking for this game, you already have it, especially since you have to compete with a 2 and 3. Now, I mean, 3 is more accessible, mind you, and 2's crazy, but but to get it complete, it's $40, and to get it with the disc only, it's $20, which is a little more reasonable. But I don't know. I feel like that's kind of a hard sale, like to ask for $20 for the disc only when, it's $40 altogether with the booklet and everything. So
yeah. But honestly, it is dirt cheap in comparison to EX2. EX2 is so expensive.
Oh yeah.
It starts at like $100 and goes on from there. That's one of the games I regret not picking up when I saw it. It was probably 15 years ago that I saw it at a game store, and it was like $40, and I was like, I'm not playing $40 for that. And I wish I had, because I'd be sitting on like a couple hundred, about a couple thousand right now. I think there's a graded version that's like over $1,000. So,
God. Well, with that being said, like and subscribe so that we can actually get a physical copy of that game. I'm joking. We'll find a way to do it. Capcom, please. Anyways.
I hope so. That'd be yeah, I think that would be a great collection. I feel like Capcom lately has been on an upswing. We had Resident Evil 2 came out, the remake, 3 and 4 remakes were great. Street Fighter 6 came out of the gate, swinging way better than Street Fighter 5 started with. Even though Street Fighter 5 ended at a great spot, I think overall, like when I first showed up, like it was, what's the word? Disappointing, I guess. Maybe that's too strong a word, but I just know I was underwhelmed. I think is the best way to say it. It was very underwhelming.
It was. It definitely was. But I mean, hey, with that being said, though, there's definitely hopes that this will get released. I mean, let's be real here. Capcom's been doing weirder stuff, like when they released the Turtles in, or skins for the Turtles, I should say, in Street Fighter 6. So, I mean...
Oh, yes, the $15 skins. Yes, so you could buy all 4 skins and pay as much as you would for the entire game. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, Capcom, yeah.
So weirder stuff has happened.
What's that?
I said weirder stuff has happened, so anything's possible with release.
Weirder things have transpired, indeed.
With that being said, instead of wasting your money on those skins, I don't know if you could get them anymore, just play Injustice.
Yeah, exactly. They're all 4 of them. You can pay what I hear, like $3 for all of them to play.
Yeah, just play Injustice.
They all play differently, so yeah.
This turned into a whole different show.
Turn into the game haters.
Yeah. Is that our new podcast?
You've heard of the Game Grumps, we're the game haters.
Yeah. With that being said, let's go to the goods and the bads.
Okay.
What would you have to say about this game that's good?
Well, there's a lot of stuff. We already discussed a lot of it. We already kind of gushed a little bit about it. It's really interesting, fun, and innovative gameplay. We even talked about the cast of characters. There's great music. The artwork's great for the game. And it's just really interesting. I think a lot of people thought when they first heard about it, it was going to be this crazy, hyper-realistic 3D version of Street Fighter. And it was just kind of like a tweaked version of Street Fighter 2. So I think a lot of people were initially thrown off by that. But it really is it's like I said before, it's a charming game.
As I've said before as well, the best thing about this game to me is that it's one of those weird Mega Man Wily Wars situations. What I mean by that is, I feel like as a kid you have this question, what would it look like if, right? Like, the reason why I bring up Wily Wars is we've had that question before of like, what would happen if Sega made Mega Man instead of Nintendo? And I feel like this one goes into that because before, I know that this is a weird thing to say, but there was a time where not everything was 3D yet. And Street Fighter was one of those that, like, if you were me, the one thing I knew was Marvel vs. Capcom and Street Fighter, so I never thought that Street Fighter would make it to 3D. And so this scratches that itch of what would it look like, and I think it does a great job. It's everything that I kind of wanted, and it's really cool to see it in this 3D aspect, because it's something that I was always curious about. And then Street Fighter 4 happened, but like, I was always curious of what it would look like on the PS1 or even PS2.
Yeah.
Especially somebody like me growing up with Tekken, like, you look at Tekken and you go, oh wow, is this what 3D fighting games look like? I wonder what Street Fighter would have done. And I know that that's me jumping the gun, because that's not what it is. It is not Tekken Street Fighter. We never gonna get that. I come on, make that one. But
the most we're gonna get is that broken version of Akuma in Tekken 7.
Yeah, well, here's hoping. You know what? It's on my hopes and dreams of that crossover with Mortal Kombat. You know, it's gonna happen one day, guys.
It may be 50 years from now, but you'll see. Mark my words.
Milo will be playing it, and I'll be in like an old person's home, and he'll be like, "Mom, it finally happened," and I'll be like, "Huh? Which universe is it?" And he'll be like, "What?"
Okay, my day.
Back in my day, they broke the universe and then called it Mortal Kombat 1, which confuses a lot of old people
Old
now.
timers like me, you see. We're used to numbers going in order, not going backward. What? So some of the bads, I would think, there are a lot of pluses with the cast, and also there are some bad things with the cast. The Street Fighter side's pretty fun, and then the original characters. But there are quite a few original characters that aren't really that original. They're really reskins. There's C-Jack, who's just a version of Balrog. What if Balrog was an Italian bouncer instead of a world champion boxer? Well, I mean, you play the same. It just look different. Blair also is really just like an alternate version of Cammy. I think some of the other characters that were in the original. Pyrie is just a different version of Ryu, and Candy's just exactly a Shoto. The actual original characters are pretty fun. Skullomania is pretty original. There's Doctrine Dark, Hokuto, so those characters shine. But yeah, there are just some characters that are just reskins of other, I think, better characters. So that's definitely a bad to me.
I think one of the things I want to add to the bads here is something that's out of the hands of the game, but it is definitely on Capcom, because this is what my show is about, accessibility. I do wish that we talked about it in accessibility, but I do wish this game was easier to get your hands on.
Yeah, I 100% agree.
I think another thing I wanted to add is also, hey Capcom, remember that time you guys said that characters' functions are what's important in Capcom versus Marvel, or Marvel versus Capcom? Yeah, this is how you do that, okay? Like, they actually functioned like the characters that were missing, alright? That's how you do it. This is the third time where I've actually attacked a company that, that I'm not even talking about. Like, I'm not even talking about that game, but I
think to be a fan of something, you need to be able to be critical of what they do, and there's a lot of things that I absolutely love about Capcom, and then there's other things that are just, and they frustrate me as a fan. Their lack of support for the 3D era, their constant tease of like 20 years, if you buy this, we'll do another Darkstalkers game, go ahead and buy it. People buy it, and they're like, hey, not enough people bought it. Okay, but this time though, if you buy all this, maybe we'll make it, and we'll buy it, and they're like, not enough people bought it, so no. So it's odd to have a company that has so many great games and so many great characters that they don't really want to do anything with.
I think the best way to describe what you just said is, hey, let's make Mega Man Legends 3. Oh, there wasn't enough interest.
Yep, exactly. We wanted 1 million people, and there was only 999,999 people that were interested, so we can't do it.
I do think what you did say, though, about the characters just kind of being copies of another character is definitely not good, but I also do kind of see it being interesting because it does. I think the problem is that the game doesn't let you know that these characters are like that. So if you're somebody, like, it kind of gives you that Street Fighter 3 issue of where you look at the roster and go, oh, okay, my main isn't here, so I might not play it.
Yeah. You could go in super disappointed that you don't have, there's no Balrog, I'm not going to play it. And I was like, well, C-Jack is just Balrog. He just doesn't look like Balrog, but he's just exactly Balrog. He has the uppercut, dash punches, super dash punch, super dash uppercut, turn punch. What doesn't? Oh, and then he has a special throw, and of course in later versions of Street Fighter, Street Fighter 4 and Street Fighter 5, Balrog had a version of a special throw. So like there's even some of C-Jack, although C-Jack is mostly a Balrog clone. There was some stuff they stole from C-Jack for Balrog later on. So it is pretty.
I feel like and another thing that if you're listening to this and you're probably like, oh, well, you would learn that these characters play this way if you had the manual. That's really cool, but we're talking about a time that we're in now that not everybody has a manual. As I've mentioned before, you can buy this game for $20. So there's a good chance that you could do that and you would never know. Especially if you are somebody that just looks at the roster. This is a problem that I think Street Fighter 3 had, despite Street Fighter 3 being one of my favorite games of all time. It definitely has the issue of having characters that are, at least look different. There are characters that functionally are the same, but this one is that problem.
Yeah, I think Capcom really learned their lesson with that. The main issue why Street Fighter 3, of course, now is the darling of the industry. Man, Street Fighter 3 is so good. But at the time when it came out, everyone was so disappointed in it because it just didn't have their characters. If you didn't like Ryu and Ken, too bad. Oh, you like Dhalsim? Well, here's Necro, and you're like, ew, no, where's his flames? Oh, well, instead of flames, there's electricity, like Blanca. Okay, so Blanca's in it? No. Okay, I like Chun-Li. Who can I play? Well, there's this character. Her name is Elena. She's a capoeira African princess. And you're like, oh, so she has spinning bird kick? No. Okay. So it's just a lot of interesting ideas, but I think they swung way too heavy on the cast for Street Fighter 3. By Third Strike, they did fix a lot of things. They added Akuma, they added Chun-Li, but it's just the reason it didn't really hit is because all the characters that people have been playing for the past 3 to 5 years in Street Fighter 2, none of them were there.
I feel like the thing is that I feel like, and this is just us talking kind of off topic, and it'll be in the episode because I don't know when we're going to come to 3. But I think that this is a great time to acknowledge this, is that either you have to do what Street Fighter has been doing now and having characters from the past, or you have to pull a King of Fighters and just go, no, this is what you get.
Yeah. Yeah, but I'm gonna. It sounds like I'm picking on Capcom a little bit, but I feel like for the most part, King of Fighters new characters are a lot more interesting than Street Fighter new characters. Not every time, but I feel I'm a lot more excited going into a new King of Fighters and trying out new characters than a Capcom game, which is disappointing. Go ahead.
With that being said, I'm definitely gonna have to have you back for the King of Fighters rundown, because that's gonna be fun to do.
Yep. I don't know if you want to do per game, maybe by era. We could do like the Orochi Saga, then we can do the Ness Saga, and we could do that, or we could do game by game. But that would be a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, with that being said, I don't really have a lot of bad to say about this game. I feel like like I said in the good, I feel like there's a lot that doesn't work with this game, but I feel like at this point, like, we're not reviewing it as it came out because YouTube wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
But I feel like with hindsight, there's no way. I'll just save that for the final thoughts. With that being said, I don't have a lot of bad to say.
One other thing, I mentioned this a little bit earlier. I know it's difficult to find the game, but there's Fighting EX Layer that is pretty much all the Arika characters, all the original characters, and some other ones, all in a fighting game all together. And that's really the best way to get an idea of how the game plays.
because it doesn't really play too differently from EX2 or EX3. There's the same chain combos. There's the guard break moves, how the specials go into supers. Now you can super cancel from one super to another. So there is a way to play a version of the game, and half the characters. It's just if you specifically want to play, boy, what did Ryu play in the game? What did Chun-Li play like? There's really no way to find that out unless you find the game itself.
Yeah, and I mean, even to be fair here, and this is me, once again, pulling a Mr. Fantastic and stretching pretty far, but they didn't play as much differently as... Well, I mean, Chun-Li is a character that is ever so fluid in Street Fighter, where she plays differently in almost each game. Mm-hmm. But Ryu, he feels like what you would expect.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah, I would say, yeah. I would say that is pretty accurate.
So, the best way to put it is, if you want to play this game, I guess we gotta recommend the one that you just mentioned, which we'll probably talk more about in the final thoughts. So, all in all, when it comes down to Street Fighter EX, does it hold up?
I would say absolutely. It holds up. It is a lot better than, if you've never played it, a lot better than you think it is. With just the fun characters, the fun gameplay mechanics, the great music, interesting backgrounds, just, the overall presentation. It's a treat. It really is. I don't know if it's worth paying $40 for it if you're only going to pay it for a little bit, if it's just a curiosity for you as a collector, or as a fighting game connoisseur, absolutely. But if it's something you're going to dabble in, I don't know if it's worth the $40, but it really is a treat.
So I've kind of been grappling with this game, honestly. It's when I first was going to do this video, and thank God I have you on, because this video would have been different if I did it on my own. I think one of the things that I've been grappling with ever since playing it is, one, I've come back to this game more times than just for gameplay footage. So that's a good thing. The reason why I've been grappling with this game is asking if it holds up is putting it in a weird place, because Street Fighter has just kind of become this.
Yeah, I would agree. I would very much agree.
And so part of me is like, oh no, it doesn't hold up. But another part of me, the part of me that has come to terms recently, is it does. Because as much as that's what Street Fighter is now. This is what Street Fighter was then, and I feel like if you're somebody like me that has that curiosity of asking the question of what would it look like, that's enough. Because not only does it look like that, not only is it part of that aesthetic era of that time, it actually plays well too.
Yes, it really does. It's still a delight to play. And that is absolutely something I will always give it. It's really fun to play. The hits are really good and really solid. Your Link, let's say, you're playing Ryu, you can do your jump and heavy punch, and then do your Link crouching medium punch to crouching medium kick, go into a hurricane kick, cancel a hurricane kick into a Shinku Tatsumaki, land, and then throw a Shinku Hadoken off. Like, that is a satisfying combo in any game.
Rick, I love you, but I am not recording that. You have to use your imagination. I am not that skilled.
Well, maybe I can dust off some footage. I can record it on my phone and send it to you, and you can pepper it and make it look like a really old school YouTube video.
Okay. Oh, I'm not making a jab at you. I'm just, for anybody that's like, oh, that footage isn't here. No, I'm not that skilled. I'm not. That's why he's here.
Oh.
With that being said, though, I think that this game, what you just mentioned is cool, but I think that all in all, I just think that, and yes, the price is kind of high, but let's hope that Capcom will eventually release this, because it's about time that they do. They already did Red Earth, so I want to say Red Ash so bad. That's never going to happen. But they want to release, they released Red Earth, so what else to go with? I think the 3D era, there is some caveats with it company-wise, but I don't think it'd be that hard to do, I would love to see it being re-released. And with that being said, my final verdict is, yes, this game holds up. And even without that, I feel like with games like Wild Ambition and even the elusive Samurai Showdown 64, this is not the hardest one to get your hands on when it comes to the 3D era.
Honestly, if you have any friends that are longtime fighting game fans, they probably already have it. You can just go to their house and play it.
Oh yeah. It's funny, talking about that, and this is just a future note. No, I'm never going to talk about Samurai Shodown 64. I have no clue how to get my hands on that one. It's not happening. I'm sorry.
I played a little bit of Samurai Shodown Sen on the Xbox 360, but even that I played for maybe an afternoon. I couldn't tell you. Besides Hamaru being in the game, I couldn't tell you anything else about it.
Yeah, well, the reason why I say this is because, like, I'm on this kick of, like, 3D era. If the next 3D era game I talk about is probably gonna be Tekken, so if that's what you're looking for, I'm afraid that I, like, pushed the wrong button and I said Samurai Shodown 64, and I'm afraid that somebody's gonna latch onto that and be like, well, you said it.
It will be just one person.
Yeah. Well, the thing that's funny about that is that that's a hard one to get get your hands on.
I have never seen it. I have not even seen it, at a game store worth ridiculously high price. I have never seen that game.
With that being said, do you have any other final thoughts that you want to add to this whole thing?
Honestly, if you're a fan of fighting games, you're doing yourself a disservice not trying to play at least a version of the game. Even if you can't find the first one, I think the second one does. It's similar to Street Fighter 2. The second one does everything the first one does better. Third one is good, but I still think the second one is the best. But really, any of the games, if you can find any of them, or if you just want to go onto your PlayStation or Xbox game store and buy Fighting EX Layer, that's a great way to experience the game. It may not be the exact version that we were talking about in our discussion today, but really, that's a great way to try it out yourself and just see what we're talking about.
So, with that being said, to my knowledge, you don't really have any YouTube presence, but if you want to hear more of this guy on YouTube, he's on Virtual Bros on my old channel. It's where we did a Let's Play show, and I have no clue what we're doing with that. But
yes, we did Sonic Mania. We did Wily. No, we did Mega Man and Bass, and then we did what else? Oh, Sonic Adventure. Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, I'll probably get you back for another Let's Play type thing somewhere down the line if you're cool with that.
Yeah, I would love that.
On Discord, so.
Yeah.
So yeah, with that being said, thank you so much for being on this episode.
This was a delight.
And with that being said, I'll see you guys next time on the next episode of Nostalgia Goggles, where I promise I will not take like 2 months to get back to fighting games. So, yeah, with that being said, see you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.